For the benefit of new students and a reminder for those of you who are existing students, this video is a brief overview of various methods you might use to mark up a score. Where a score is comparatively complex, and by that I mean there might be more than one single vocal line that you sing and others are singing a different part, I find that a useful starting point is to either highlight the entire part that I'm singing or put something like an asterisk or a highlight at the beginning of each line. You can see that here, where this is one method, highlighting the entire part. I personally find that quite messy, but you might find that very useful. And here's another method where I use the asterisk just on the line. That's another method. And here's a third one where I just highlight my particular voice part. The advantage of this this method is that when you're looking up at a conductor and then you're looking down at the score, looking at the conductor of the score, it means when you go back to the score, your eye can instantly find a place marker, if you like, of where you need to go back to. So you need to clearly annotate where rests are to be taken and the duration of those rests, and specifically where the consonant might need to be placed. So we know that as a general principle in choral singing, consonants tend to be placed at the ends of phrases on the next available rest. So we're going, here's the word, sometimes we choose to place the consonant. So you get the idea. Sometimes we actually choose to place the consonant in a different place. So you need a method to make that obvious. And a personal approach I find useful is to use an arrow like this, and you can see that it comes from the end of one word and it floats down onto the appropriate rest. Now that rest might be a real rest that the composer's written, or it might be one that I've invented for the purpose of saying, here is where I'm putting my consonant. There are various ways of annotating a breath marking. One method is to use phrasing marks from the previous phrase and then the next phrase, so it becomes obvious that, okay, here's the end of one phrase, here's the start of the next one, therefore I must breathe in the middle. I don't find that particularly useful personally, but you might. A more common and reliable method is to use either just a simple tick or to use a big comma above the notes, or sometimes you might want to put traffic lines. Traffic lines tend to be used when we're indicating that it's a big pause and it's a big rest and a big breath, rather than just a simple one. On occasion, you might also want to write something like BB for big breath. The trouble with that is you don't want to make it, you see BB and you suddenly then go, and you create tension. So you want to find words or things that are going to help you. So sometimes you'll find a piece of music that is very straightforward. You don't need to write any counting. It just is what it is. But sometimes you'll find that there's something quite awkward, particularly when it's syncopated or what you're doing is quite contrapuntal and it's different to what other parts are doing. I do this all the time when there's an awkward phrase, just so I'm really clear. So I've got a couple of examples here. You can see the ones here. I'm using the format of 1, 2, and 3, 4, or 1, 2, and 3. So it's ya, bum, ba, ba. So do what is helpful to you. Everyone has their own method. I quite like the number, an and an when it's in straightforward quavers, crotchets, quavers, and semiquavers. And at cadences, be aware that if you have a comparatively straight note, but some other part moves, you need to be aware that they're moving. So in this example, you can see that I've circled the other part so that I know what to listen for. When we're pitching, we sometimes want to make an annotation to indicate that we need to be maybe the same pitch as another part, so we arrive and we tune together, or that some other part moves and we need to be very aware of what's going on around us. So for example, if you're trying to listen to another part and get your pitch from that so that you know where to come in, I would circle that other part and the key note from that and then draw a line from that to your own part, so you've got some visual cue as to what you're trying to pick up. Similarly, if you need to be in tune with another part, but you're coming from different directions or in different ways, you might want to circle both of those notes and put some sort of join. So you can see here in that second bar, you've got mater dolorosa in the soprano and the tenor part. You're both on B flats. One is arriving from underneath, one is arriving from above. So you want to make sure that that's bang in tune. I've done the same thing a little bit later, a few bars later, in the bass and the soprano on the lacrimosa. Then notice that after the lacrimosa, I've got a little bracket between the soprano and the alto, and that could be an indication to me that I need to be moving very much in time and getting my pitching sorted out, because we're doing a duet at that point. I could be doing the same thing if I was a tenor and bass on that second last bar on dum with those two notes. The final thing that I've got on there, notice that on that third bar, on the word juxta in the soprano, I've got a little arrow up, and that's to indicate that that note needs to be a little bit higher when I sing it. I could do the same thing with an arrow down. So it's just about making your own little annotations that make sense to you, so that you know where you're tuning, how you're picking up your pitches, and then how you might be balancing your pitch with another part in particular. A method I find quite useful for translations is to write the translation word for word above individual notes. I don't do this in grammatical English, but in word for word English, so that I know what the real word means, and that provides me with some indication of where the emphasis might be. When I repeat words, I tend not to repeat the translation, although in longer pieces or more complex sections, I certainly do. And at the beginning of an entire section of words, I might write the entire translation in a little box or something like that, just so I know, oh, this is where we're going with this. Find a method for notating specific vowels or consonants. For example, I personally use the letters EHS when there is an E vowel, and then I tend to use an acute accent on top of that vowel if it's a brighter sound, which is sometimes called a closed vowel. You could learn the International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA, but sometimes it's just easier to assume that most vowels and consonants across most languages will be pronounced consistently, and then notate the exceptions. So a few final things that fall into the other category. You'll notice on the soprano part that I have highlighted the crescendo and decrescendo marks. In this case, I've highlighted them in yellow. I've got in the the fifth bar, I've got a piano marking because that's what the conductor wants me to come back to, so I've got that there. In the next bar on lacrimosa, I've put a little accent there because that's where the conductor wants me to put a slight stress. And then I've got my breath mark after mosa, and then of course I've already got my mark up saying that I'm now going to be singing in third, soprano and alto. So there's no right or wrong way of doing any of this. It's a matter of trying to come up with a consistent format within a piece of music that works for you. One thing I would say is that if you're using a disposable score, so a printed score that is going to be thrown away at the end, or you're using a tablet version, go for your life with using different colours, highlight pens, whatever you like. However, if you're using a library score or a score that is borrowed and needs to be returned, always use a 2B pencil. 2B is really important. HB is too hard, 3B is too soft and smudgy, so we want to go for a 2B. It's the perfect weight to go on printed scores. It writes cleanly, it's easy to sharpen, it doesn't smudge much at all, it's exceptionally easy to erase at the end of the process, and it doesn't dig into the page and then score the page with hard markings. So it's the perfect pencil. So I hope that's given you an overview of some ways you can think about marking up your score. My final comment is that there is no right way. I provided you with lots of different options. Find the ones that work for you and try to consistently apply them.